So I'm 6 years old and coming home from school, and I say to our mom, "Hey, Mom, what's a bastard?" And, tears in her eyes, she's holding them back, and she says, Timothy, who said that to you? I said, "There's some kids in school." She goes, "Well, no, you're not a bastard. Yeah, you have a father." And I was a little confused because he wasn't there, he hadn't been there. Maybe twice. I have two memories of him when I was a toddler. Moving on from that, at about 6 and a half, our mom meets this guy, Buddy, and he moves in, and they end up getting married. And my grandfather at that time tells me, "Hey, Timmy, you can't come to me with your problems anymore. You have to take them to Buddy." And I thought, "Oh, Jesus, man, I can't take my problems to this guy." And I was heartbroken. I was shattered. My grandfather, he was my guy. So anyway, I stuffed that down. And I sure as heck didn't go to Buddy. So anyway, Buddy happened to he happened to have a bit of a drinking problem, and he'd get violent when he drank. And he didn't drink every day, but he drank a lot. And the things I remember are that, being traumatized, waking up at 2 in the morning to the dining room china cabinet being slammed on the floor, and just in shock and terror, and our mother screaming and him beating the hell out of her, bloody lip, black guy, and me sitting in my room thinking, do something. I'm sorry, I'm 6 and a half. What the heck am I going to do? So, I felt every punch that she got. So that happened a couple of times. And then time moved on. Let's say I was probably about 7 years old. It was Christmas. We were at his brother's house. He was sitting, down like this. I was sitting in front of him. He had a drink of 7 and 7, and he gave me a drink of that. And my whole face was numb, and I thought, my God, no wonder big people drink, man. Jesus Christ. And I thought, no wonder my old man ain't around. And our ma, she should have one of these, to kind of chill out a little bit. And so I thought, well, this guy, he ain't so bad. But, I have that experience of him beating the shit out of our mother. So this became medicine. That drug was medicine for me. And every time he'd want a beer, he'd say, "Hey, boy, go get me a beer." I drank a little bit of it before I got it to him. And, I wanted to be like this guy, right? And he was a tough guy. He could walk on his thumbs. Ishinryu karate expert. Tough guy, street guy, brawler. Let me get my thoughts together. So anyway, yeah, I want to be like him, right? The big dad. And time goes on. I don't know, probably around 13, 14. I'm taking booze to school. I'm putting it in my locker, Earhart Junior High School over there. Break time, I'm going to my locker and get my medicine. 15 years old, the teacher over at Western High School, he's putting me in the greenhouse because I'm too drunk to participate in class. So, and the kids I'm hanging around with, and I had to question, why am I hanging with these guys? I thought they were bad guys. I'm like, "Tim, you're with them, all right? You're one of the bad guys." And it got pretty bad. And not only that, I'm trying to emulate the stepdad guy. This was early on, 8 years old, 9 years old. So I'm smoking cigarettes, I'm chewing tobacco, and I get caught, and I get my ass beat for doing that from him. But I'm like, wait a minute, man, I'm just trying to be like you. So, I'm emulating my role models. I didn't have good role models. But all of that computed in my brain, what I'm going to do when I get big. I'm going to be a man. He took me to blind pigs in Detroit, gambling houses, 2 and 3 in the morning. And I thought, man, when I get big, I'm going to have one of these houses. And so that is in my brain. That's what you do when you get big. That's what big men do. So anyway, age of 13, Bill, that's our dad, he comes back into our life. He's clean and sober now. And so, I didn't want to talk to him, though. I'm like, where the hell you been for, 13 years? So I was distrustful. I was shut down. But anyway, he went ahead and gave him a call back. So Michael and Patrick, my brothers, and I started seeing him on the weekends. And he was trying to make up for lost time. He would take us all over the place. He lived in the Cass Corridor, but he would take us up to Ann Arbor. My brother was in college up there. And to me, that was like going out of country. Getting out of Southwest Detroit and going to Ann Arbor was a whole nother world. I'm like, damn, this is nice, man. The Brown Jug restaurant, I'll never forget that. All the pinball joints, everybody's playing pinball and having fun. Going to movies, going to plays at the Bonsdale Theater. He took me over to Belle Isle. He was trying to teach me to drive, but we got pulled over and got a ticket. So, and he's arguing with the cop, and I'm thinking, don't frickin' argue with the cop, man. But anyway, so that was a lesson, a driving lesson. And so things got worse at home with the stepdad and our mother. I'm 15 and I'm rebellious as hell. I should have been in juvenile. I should have had some kind of lockdown therapy because I needed it. So at 15, big fight at home with our mother, and I call my dad and I say, hey, can I move in with you? And he's like, yeah, sure. He was married again, 4th time. And I wanted to be like him, a ladies' man as well, right? But that ain't no way to be a ladies' man. But anyway, so I move in with him, and let's see, he lived on the east side, but he had a store at Cass and Alexandrine. It was a secondhand store, and I would work down there with him. And I thought I was, becoming a big man, a real big man, like taking on responsibilities, working in a store. But it was too healthy for me. See, he's getting therapy and going to meetings. I'm still getting high. And I'm like, so I called our mother and our stepdad about a year later. And I said, hey, because they moved to Tennessee. I said, can I move down there? And she's like, no, I don't think so, Tim. I said, well, I'm in a lot of trouble up here in the streets. And if I moved there, I could maybe, get squared away. And a little while later, she called back and said, okay, you can move down here. And my old man was like, what are you doing, man? You got it good here. I'm like, yeah, I knew what I was doing, again, too healthy. I'm going south. So I ended up in Tennessee, out of the streets of Detroit, out of the fire into the frying pan. The stepdad's people were bootleggers, okay? Like, back in the 1930s and 40s, his grandparents ran moonshine. And so in the 70s, they owned a liquor store in Chattanooga. They would bring the booze to Riceville, Tennessee, put me in charge of selling it. Now I'm a real big man, right? Having to fight guys, just all the nonsense that goes. Think of the movie Ozarks, okay? Right? So after about a year and a half, I get kicked out of the house. I did some really stupid, I do stupid, tragic things when I drink. Not good. And that's at the age of 17 and a half, going on 18, about 18 years old. I moved back to Detroit, Southwest Detroit, get a job. And I'm spiraling out, and I think, you know what? You should join the Army. That'll make a man out of you, right? And well, so I did that, but it didn't make a man out of me. It increased the drinking and drugging. That whole culture in the 70s in the military was about that. So after about a year, 9 months, almost 2 years, we had a handshake deal with Uncle Sam. I don't step foot on another military installation for the rest of my life. Like to this day, I got to just drive through if I'm going. And then they promised not to lock me up for 2 years. And I took that deal, okay? We won't go into that. That's a whole nother story. So where'd I go? Oh, briefly went back to Tennessee, and I'm bottoming out. And so I called Bill, my dad. He's living on Cass Corridor, Him and Rana got divorced. Moved in with him for a minute. And he had meetings in the store, so I started going to meetings in the store. And I don't know, I was clean for a little while, and then I met Sherry. And you have not had a drink until you had a drink of Sherry, you know. And truthfully, I switched addictions, and I found mommy. See, I was 20, and I had done nothing with that trauma that I had grown up in, the unhealthy ways to function. I didn't do anything about that, and I was a mess internally. In my mind, I thought, well, I can be a dad. And she had 2 kids, and we had a kid of our own. And I thought, I won't do what those other guys did, Buddy and Bill. Well, I did exactly what they did, because that's the programming in my brain, just like a computer. That program is in there. So that lasted 7 years, and it ended up where I left. But before I left, I started seeing this guy, Ted Church. He was my dad's therapist at Sacred Heart. And I would see him every Saturday. I'd drive down to Gratiot and Russell, and he lived in the rectory of St. John St. Luke's. I'd sit there, and anyway, he would do therapy. It was off the books, didn't charge me a dime. And met his wife, Jean. Jean was my dad's best friend. So a year goes by, and I end up getting a divorce. I had a collapse. I couldn't function. You know, I'd stay clean, sober a year, and I'd relapse. I'd stay clean, sober a year, and I'd relapse. And so anyway, therapy with Ted, lost everything, right? I had a freaking breakdown. It was sober. I hadn't had anything to use in a year. But what I was doing, I was starting to work on my insides. And with all of that trauma, I just broke down. Couldn't function. I could not function. I ended up moving in with Ted and Jean. They would rent people rooms for like $100 a month, but you had to go by the rules in the house, right? You go to therapy, you hang out with people in the house, you have chores in the house, be in by midnight. And I'm 27. I'm thinking, what are you doing, Tim? And I remember him saying, he was shaking my hand one day, and he said, Tim, and I shook hands like, and I'm trying to get my hand, and he wouldn't let go of my hand. And I'm like, what? I'm ready to punch him, and he's like, I'll make a deal with you. He said, I'll bridge you to the group, and the group will bridge you to God. But you do everything I tell you to do. And I'm thinking, I don't know if this guy's a psycho. I don't know. Somebody, you know, it's kind of a cult shit. And I'm like, and then the healthy, little small healthy part said, dude, why don't you take some direction take a look at what just happened in your life for 7 years, man. Take that handshake. And I did. And so lived with him for 4 years. So I didn't go to therapy. I lived with the therapist for 4 years, right? And this man showed me what it was to be a father image. I remember him sharing with me. He said, Tim, most family units, he said 1 out of 10 are healthy. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then that made me feel okay. And he showed me love. Like he would give me money to go get something to eat. I remember coming home. I was laying on the couch. It was cold. And I fell asleep. And he came home and he put this blanket over me. And I felt warmth. And it wasn't just the warmth of that blanket. It was the warmth of love. And I was like, wow, man. And other therapeutic things that he would do. There were just tons of them. He would call me a winner. Every time he saw me at a meeting, hey, winner. And it just boosted me up because I felt like a loser all my freaking life, you know. And then one time I saw him and heard him call this other guy a winner. I mean, what the fucking, wait a minute, man. I'm the, oh, Jesus, man. He calls other people winner? Yeah, so I was crushed. I would meet with him in Greektown, and he would have 10 people from Sacred Heart, and he would do therapy like on the sly. And he put me on the hot seat all the time, like this one time, to get me to open up. He said, hey, Tim, what do you think of this guy? I won't use his name. But anyway, he was one of my mentors. And I said, the truth? He goes, just say it. I said, well, he thinks he's above everybody because he has a PhD. Now, I thought Ted was going to take my side. He said, well, we know what you would do with a PhD. So I understood that anything that I was thinking about anybody else is what I need to look at within myself. All right? So it was that type of therapy, nonstop, 4 years. Think of that, 4 years, right? So anyway, and he got me into artwork as well. Yeah. I'd walk to my therapy meetings and I'd find stuff in the street and cobble it together, make little sculptures. And he just kept encouraging that. I made some splatter paintings one day, and then he had me do his drapes in his house. This was unconventional therapy. He didn't want the state involved because he couldn't call people on their crap. You can't, like in a therapeutic setting, you have certain boundaries. And here, he could just tell it like it was and do other different things. So anyway, he really encouraged my artwork, got me into artwork. Got my old man, he got Bill into artwork as well. So I moved out of Ted's place and continued to go to therapy meetings, and I kept telling on myself. And one day he said, man, you need treatment. And at that time, I had been clean sober like 8 years. And I thought, no, I don't fucking need treatment. That's the sick voice. I'm like, maybe you better listen to that dude, man. And he said, yeah, why don't you go over to sobriety house and get a bed? I'm like, oh, shit. Call up sobriety house. You guys got a bed? No. But come on down, we'll give you an interview, right? So they hire the sickest ones, right? So I went to work at sobriety house. But the position was a live-in position, right? And so I lived there for 8 years, right? As the house monitor. So I'm watching out for all the guys in the house. House monitor, maintenance man, driver. If OSHA came, I was the guy taking them around. If the cook didn't show up, start making sandwiches. Right, so that's what, 4 years living with the therapist, 8 years living in a treatment center. And I was so sick that they then hired me at Brighton Hospital. And they asked me if I would be the guy that lived in this program, in the house, that they had an overnight program they were opening up. I'm sure. So I stayed there a year. So that's 13 years of living in institutions in order to get somewhat a semblance of quit reaching out, that everything you have is within. So after that, I ended up moving from out of that hospital setting back to Detroit. Was a counselor for a minute at a sobriety house. Moved to my place on Heidelberg Street and met Rosa, second wife, and that lasted 12 years. And I don't know about clapping because that's okay. She had enough of my shit. All right. I'm a hard guy to live with. I just know that. But I got a lot of more work to do on myself. So yeah, right. Thank you. So she left 2 years ago, and we have a daughter, Emily, and Emily flew up here about a week ago, so she's here tonight, right? And she's been a big inspiration for my artwork. My artwork changed because of Rosa and Emily. It boosted my spirits, my creativity, and all those sculptures up there. There are some dark, ominous ones, rusted out ones, and there's more playful ones, and that's because of that marriage and our Emily. It also brings a lot of different memories. I want to say this as well, that there are 600,000 fathers incarcerated right now, right? And I don't know how many in treatment right now. So I think of that, and especially having worked in treatment and experienced that. So we can think of those guys, think of the families, and offer up a prayer or whatever, just a moment of silence or whatever. Also, all of my mentors are gone. right? This wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to live forever. And my ego, honest to God, I thought I was going to live forever. But anyway, that got crushed. But I do wear Ted's ring. And on the back of this ring, and this ring went between him and I 4 times. That's another story. But on the back of the ring is this letter F. And he said, Tim, that's for our Father. He said, because we are humans and we're not going to be perfect fathers, but there's one that we can all go to, and we can call God whatever name you have for God, or even if you don't believe in God, something, a star blew up somewhere. I'm part of that. So I remember that's where true fathership is, in the sense of counselor, comforter, supporter. I had to look that up on Google. I swear to God, I'm like, what is father, man? And all these different attributes, right? To support financially, to support emotionally, spiritually. I'm like, wow, okay. And so Ted showed me that, okay? And so I try to carry that, to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Tim Burke. I love you, Tim Burke.